All right, welcome back to XYZ. This time we're going to actually talk about buying big stuff and like how you did that and maybe just kind of buying stuff. I know we've kind of touched about this on other episodes, but a little bit of backstory. I was reading my kids a book. It's like a little critter book. And in the book, the guy's like, the little boy is like, someday I'm going to order from a catalog or I'm going to use the phone to make phone calls, like all of this stuff. And I was like, and in the catalog, there's like a picture of like a house, and I'm like, people used to buy stuff like that. So, yeah, let's jump into it. So, I guess the main question of the day, how did you buy giant stuff back in the day? Like, you actually used like a catalog to be like, hey, I want to spend $8,000 on a, I don't know, a car or I don't know, a fridge.
Well,
Yeah,
when go ahead, Elmi.
I was just gonna add on to what even if it's like across the country? Because I know some people buy cars in like different states and stuff.
Well, maybe this wasn't quite as big as you were thinking, but like the first major purchases that I thought I was making back in the 80s was stereo equipment and musical instruments, which wasn't in the 8,000, but we're talking like my first real keyboard that I bought was probably like $1,300 back in 1986 or 7. And then of course stereo equipment too. I was insane. I had like 2 or 3 jobs while I was in college, part-time jobs, of course. And so I just used that instead of using it towards school, which I probably should have. I was using it towards my extracurricular musical activities. But yeah, so back then there was no big box stores for music or, no Best Buy around anything like that. So everything was the brick and mortar, like mom and pop stores where I was. And, you guys know, like if you see something in an advertisement or on TV or something, and it says list price, you never pay list price, right? I mean, that's just a thing, right? You never pay list price. Well, these stores were list price. Back then, there was no competition because there was no Amazon. There was nothing like that. So if you wanted to buy something, you knew that there was only 1 or 2 places that you were going to get it from, and you were paying list price.
Wow. So like, how did you know to like go there? Was it just like word of mouth? Like how did you like even figure out that like this 1 or 2 place like had the item?
Yeah, of course they were specialty stores. Like when it came to the audio or the music things, it was word of mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, people are like, "Hey, there's a music place downtown."
I want to jump on this because we're talking about it, but like, why was stereo and VCR equipment like such a big deal? Like,
well,
oh my God. Like, of course, I think of like literally every single like movie in the 80s and 90s, like people are buying VCRs or stealing VCRs or like whatever. Like what?
Well, my guess and what I'm pretty sure it is, there was now everyone's on their phones, right? Or on computer games or whatever. Mm-hmm. Then the years that I'm talking, there was nothing like that. So if you wanted to occupy yourself, music was a huge thing and movies were a huge thing. So that's what we were focusing on. And we would have, I was talking to somebody about this, we would have listening parties, for like if a new album came out or something, somebody bought it and you would go to that person's house and you'd all sit around the stereo and you'd listen to it, probably at full blast. And that was, that was just like an activity. So music was, in having like audiophile equipment, it seemed like a much bigger deal back then. Just because.
Wow, that's like blowing my mind because like I've always seen that like in movies, like those listening parties, and I always just kind of thought it was like a thematic effect.
I thought like that too.
Right. It was always just like, oh, this is just like a movie thing, but I guess that was real.
I have to ask them, is there like a certain album that you like remember listening to that was like really good?
Let me get back to you on that. There was I remember this is really dating me, but I remember the first time I heard REM album Green. And that was like a huge deal. You know, it's like REM at that point was really picking up momentum. They were really becoming big. They just got signed to a major label. And when we got that, it's like we listened to that. And that was a huge thing at the time. That's kind of embarrassing to say now. But yeah, that was one huge one.
And then I assume you found REM and stuff. I know in another episode you mentioned like you could like send a penny and then like get like a record or something. Is that kind of like how you guys would like discover this type of thing?
Sometimes, but yeah, a lot of it was just word of mouth or somebody that had it. And I shouldn't admit this, but yeah, people were running illegal copies of albums off all the time, and they'd be like, "Hey, I got this new album and I made you a tape of it."
Sure.
You know, that kind of stuff. People were passing along cassettes. "Hey, I thought you might like this. Here's
Sure.
an illegal bootleg copy of my album that I just bought." So that was I would just say a lot of it's like that, word of mouth kind of stuff. Yeah, that was it. And of course the radio, you know, that I don't listen to the radio now at all, but back then that radio was, you know, that was pretty much a staple of what we were doing. So that was a lot of it too. But
what was the most common way to get your news?
Say that what?
Most common way to get your news.
Oh, well, of course, I think I've said this before, but there was only really 3 stations, 3 TV stations. So that's how I got, you know, usually you tuned into one of those. And of course, we didn't have VCR or anything like that. So at the time, we couldn't afford one. So you would have to watch at the time, you know, like 10 o'clock or whatever, 4 o'clock, whatever that was, for the news. That's where a lot of it was. And the newspapers. Newspapers was a lot bigger thing back then too. So,
So like, did you ever buy anything out of a catalog then, or like, what was like the biggest thing that you ended up ordering, and like, how did you know? I have so many questions. Like, how did you know that like it was a reputable buy? You know, like an Amazon review. You know, it's like, how did you know like it was a good product? And then like, if it was a piece of shit, like, what did you do to like return, you know, this massive, really expensive item?
Yeah. So at the time I was obsessed with reviews. So I would get magazines that were about, you know, if it was either an audiophile magazine for the audio equipment or you know, one of the music trade magazines for the music equipment. And I would just read the reviews and then look out for what they said was good. And that's what I would usually base it on. So It wasn't really user reviews. It was always a professional review done by a journalist. And, you know, in retrospect, I think a lot of those were, I don't know if I would say they were paid, but they weren't always the best, you know.
Yeah, I think it's probably a lot more transparent now. Like, yes. I still think there's like problems, but I feel like even back then you would never know. You had zero chance of knowing whether those were paid or not.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, because there were a few of them I'm just like, you were not right. You were way off base, dude. You know. And then as far as returning, I mean, the places, so back to what you're saying about the catalog. So yeah, usually you could, you know, mail in for catalogs. You know, you'd send an envelope off to this company and say, please send me one of your catalogs. You could call them too, if you knew what their number was, and ask for the catalog. You wait for a few weeks, get it in the mail. But also, I think the primary place that I would find those at the time was, again, back to those magazines I was mentioning. There were all these advertisements in the back, and they would advertise some of the products, but the main thing was, you knew, you could see where other people, if they were big enough and you knew you'd seen them in the magazine for a while, you're like, well, they've been around a while and people are buying stuff from them, so that is probably a reputable company. Usually it was somewhere out of New York or California. And you'd call that place up and say, hey, I see you're selling this thing. I'm looking for this receiver or CD player or whatever. And a lot of times they'd say, oh, I'm sorry, those are all sold out. That magazine's old. And so then you had to say, what else do you have? And they would kind of go through the list of what the prices were. And I'd say, okay, well, send me that one. So sometimes it was kind of an impulse thing too.
Would they send you it and then you'd send them payment, or they would you'd have to pay them first?
I'd have to mail in my payment, which at the time, nobody I knew at my age had a credit card or debit card.
Okay.
So, and they wouldn't take a check most of the time because that was,
Yeah.
So I would end up getting a money order. I'd have to go to the bank or somewhere like that sold a money order and mail that to them. And then once they got that, then they would mail me the stuff. Yeah.
And this process was like, I assume, like months long.
Yeah, at least, probably around a month and a half, probably by the time it was all said and done.
Where's my 1 day shipping? What the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, some of it maybe was a little quicker, but it was definitely weeks for sure. And I always got a kick out of the one place I bought a lot of my music equipment from. It was I can't remember the name of the place, but it was in New York. And I always call in and he'd say, where are you at? I'm like, Iowa. And he's like, oh, we get the nicest people from there. And he would just like every single time I would call, he's like, Iowa? Oh yeah, we get the nicest people from there. And it cracked me up. But yeah, it was a long process, and you didn't always exactly know what you were getting. Because even with those reviews and everything I mentioned, a lot of that stuff was out of date by the time I got to it. So
like it was crap. You return it.
Mm-hmm.
Was that pretty like? I think of like returns now, where like Amazon, I buy something and it's like Amazon's like. Sometimes they're even just like, don't send it back. We don't. It's more. So like, how was it back then? Would they like fight you on the phone? I assume you had to like call somebody and like talk to somebody, right?
I only had to do that a couple times, and it really wasn't bad. They would send me a return authorization, and I would stick that on the package and send it back. I think maybe I bought something used from one of those stores once, and maybe I had a problem with it, and I maybe had to pay to ship it back. But otherwise, it wasn't too bad. But again, it was kind of a long process. Yeah.
Do you know anyone that ever bought a house or anything out of a magazine? Like I think like the Sears catalog or whatever, you could like actually buy a house. You know anyone that ever did that?
I don't know anybody that did that, or a car for that matter. I think you mentioned earlier. I don't know anybody that bought a car that way. No.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a little like older than you, Chris. It was like the Sears catalog homes, and you just like build it, and they'll like send you the whole thing.
Yeah.
I've heard of that, but I don't know anybody that actually did that. It'd be interesting to read up and see, like Google and see people that actually did that and what their experience was, though.
It's interesting how, like, I was thinking of the catalogs that I used to get. So, like, I was big into, like, building PCs and stuff in the, like, early 2000s. And I'd get, like, these, I remember, like, the PC Gamer magazines, but there's also, like, I can't even remember what they're called, but they essentially had, like, PC builds in them. They had all these different specs. And you would like essentially like call them up, like it was probably like a CyberPower PC. I know they're super old, that type of stuff. And there'd be all these different products, and you'd essentially just call them up and be like, "I want this computer," and you just sort of like order it. It was thousands of dollars, and then it would just like come to your house and arrive there. And I remember just being like obsessed with those magazines, but it's wild because like you would buy them like. You would buy the magazine, and then the entire magazine was just like ads, with like some very like low quality, like, articles or something in there. It's like, oh, this new GPU came out, and here's like this very like high level specs, but it was like you pay like $2 or $10 or whatever for this magazine, and it was just like really like a bunch of ads too.
Mm-hmm. I remember those.
Yeah,
there were a lot of those in the 80s.
Speaking of ads, like what influences you guys like the most, like for buying stuff?
I used to think so when I had no money and I was a kid. I used to think that I was like impervious to ads. Even probably like it's probably just no money. I don't know, and less problems. I'd look at like I'd be watching TV back in the 2000s, and there was no Netflix or anything, so you were naturally just watching ads on television. A car ad would come on or a food ad would come on. It was just like whatever, like completely uninterested, don't care, doesn't even affect me at all. Now it's like every single ad I see now, it's like I'm like judging it and being like, oh, maybe it makes me start thinking about it. It's just so funny how like that has shifted over time as I've gone through the stages of my life, and it's like I am now like extremely susceptible to certainly not buying things, but the ads definitely like make me think and consider the products for sure now.
I'd say for me, those reviews I mentioned earlier were probably a lot of, for the audiophile stuff, the I say quote unquote reviews, because in hindsight, I think a lot of them were just ads pretending to be reviews. But that was a lot of it for that. And I think when it came to the musical instruments, a lot of it was just who I saw playing the instrument on TV and stuff. That was a lot. Who was famous, who I liked and what they were playing. That was a big advertisement for the product. But all reviews there too, I would say.
Oh my God, I forgot that Elmine brought this up before, was in the chat, like the Black Friday. Like,
oh yeah.
I remember when I was little, like that was a huge deal. Like, was it always kind of like that? I feel like that Black Friday is like a complete scam since, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. Like,
honestly, I should research this, but I don't remember ever hearing about Black Friday until sometime in the 90s when I was an adult and I was out working. I don't remember ever hearing anything about it. I never knew anything until, it
wouldn't
90s.
Surprise me if it was just made up, like, by the exact people who kind of then murdered it in the same way.
Yeah. But no, there was definitely, that was not something we talked about at all when I was in college or high school. No, not at all.
Did you ever I would say participate in some crazy Black Friday shopping?
Me, I think I want to say in the late 90s, I went to, do you remember Comp USA when that was the thing? So I remember, and I wanted a digital camera so badly, and they were having some kind of blowout sale on Black Friday for like some really cheap, like $10 digital camera. I'm like, wow, I'm finally going to have a digital camera. And I was waiting in line forever, like this huge line to get my digital camera. I was so proud. And as I was buying it, some guy looked at me and he's like, I hope you got rechargeable batteries. I'm like, why did he say that? And I realized you could take like 5 pictures and the batteries were dead.
Oh my God.
And they were terrible quality, but I had no idea. I just was like, wow, I got my digital camera.
New age.
Yeah. But that was the only time I really did anything Black Friday. Honestly, I just I stayed the heck away from that, because I think back in the 90s too, there were a lot of incidents where people were getting trampled and stuff. There was a lot. Maybe that still happens, but it seemed like it was really bad there for a while. And I'm like, I'm just steering clear of that.
Yeah, I don't think I ever did either. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think I ever, got in the crazy. Some of my my stepmom and like her sisters, or not her sisters, her daughters, like my
stepsisters.
Yeah, my stepsisters. Thank you. it's late at night.
I know.
Like, I know they went a couple times. I don't know what their experiences were, but like I know like they would at least like in the late 2000s they were jumping from store to store for at least for a little bit, trying to like get some stuff. So I remember it was always like TVs. Always TVs, I feel like, was like everyone. It was always the TV deals.
Yep.
Maybe it still is.
Yeah, I remember seeing a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
TVs just get better each year, like so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that they're having a problem because the TVs have gotten so good and everyone's bought the TVs they want, and nobody's buying new TVs because everybody's got 3 TVs in their house that are big enough and do everything they wanted to. So they're really struggling to come out with like all these features. That's why I think you're seeing like all these different, I don't even know but they're trying to come up with gimmicks to sell them now because nobody's buying TVs anymore because everybody's
Oh, I can't wait for AI in my TV.
Oh yeah, it's coming.
100%. Yeah. For me, I remember I was Black Friday shopping with my mom when I was like really little, but I was always just like in the cart because she like had to take care of me. That's all it was. And I don't remember anything crazy, but for my mom, you always kind of knew what kind of gifts you're gonna get for like Ramadan because that's kind of when she was like buying stuff. Because back then that's when like the months were like aligning. So I do remember that. But yeah, nothing crazy. Just remember like not begging not to go because it was so boring. Because we never went to GameStop. That's all I wanted to go to. Just want to go to GameStop.
Dude, it's so funny how like shopping was like boring back then, unless you were like buying like a video game or something, and now it's like, hey, this is like pretty fun all the time.
Yeah,
you get the actual dopamine now. So yeah,
that's so true. I'm thinking about the last time I went to the mall. Like, am I like that? I'm like, yeah, I'm like that right now. It's super fun.
Yeah, the mall's so nostalgic for me. It's like I just want to go and like look at stuff I could buy. I could buy it. I just never did.
Speaking of malls, do you guys have like a favorite mall food?
Honestly, like when malls were a big thing, I just eating at the mall is like super nostalgic for me. I guess like I just really enjoy like eating in that public place, and it's kind of like it's like this whole experience. I think I talked about it in another episode. Yeah, it was just kind of this whole shebang for me. Whether it was Sbarro or Taco Bell or Subway, it didn't matter. So.
You know what I realized when I was in Europe? It's like how everyone like eats outside and everyone's like close together, and it's like feels like a mini walkable like town almost. Like everyone's there.
That's a really good way. It was kind of I like that. I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, it's totally like almost like a town square type of thing, vibe.
Yeah, and everyone in your party could just figure out, oh, I'm going to go to Sbarro, or I'm going to go to Taco John's, or I'm going to do that. You had so many things to pick from, and everybody was happy, and yeah, I could see that. I'd say one of mine, my favorite nostalgic foods, and I know this is really dumb, but my oldest son and I used to just go there and get those corn dog nuggets from A&W, and we thought that those were good. Yeah, I love those. Haven't had those for probably 20 some years, but yeah.
Do you guys have like brand loyalty still? Or do you have like those like brand quality fall off or anything? Or is like any still brands you guys used to buy that you still like live by?
I think some of the only ones I've really retained are around like the computer space. I'm thinking of like all of like my clothes and stuff. Like not really. I feel like the ones I said this a million times, like I grew up super poor, so like it's mostly like, hey, I can afford better brands now, so I kind of like I've bought up into those. But yeah, mostly it's like in the computer space, like I still prefer NVIDIA graphics cards, but like other than that, like which specifically isn't even really technically a brand. There's a bunch of brands of NVIDIA cards, but yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I have. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, it's the same as what you said, Ben. Is that when I was poor or just didn't have enough money, I was buying things. Maybe I had a little bit of brand loyalty then to the things that I could afford. Like for example, like I used to be a General Motors guy. Like I would buy Chevy cars back then, but now I wouldn't. Sorry, I know you have a Chevy, but now it's like
No
I always
offense.
wanted a Honda. That's what I was like, because I knew some people that had Hondas, like, oh, these are great, and I just always wanted one, and I finally was able to afford one 4 years ago, and I'm like, oh, now I finally made it. But I wouldn't say overall, yeah, back then I probably had brand loyalty to the things I could afford, but to me now, no, not really.
What about you, El? I mean, I'm really curious, like how that's imparted, because I feel like it's gotten like as it goes through the generations, like it gets like less and less. I mean, just not even just brand loyalty, but like loyalty to like any sort of like group, So like, how are you at? Where are you at?
So I think it's like when I was a kid, I thought I had some because I would always see like ads for like PlayStation. I guess I'm still a PlayStation guy, so like that's brand loyalty right there. But I think now and more recently, the brand loyalty from our generation is like we've had so many fast fashion brands, other brands that like pop up and die super quickly, that we like look backwards and be like, oh, this is like an LL Bean jacket, and they still make good quality jackets, and like it'll last you like 30, 40 years. I feel like that's like the new brand loyalty. It's like buy it for life items.
I see. So like explain like the buy it for life, I guess, like mentality and stuff.
Yeah, it's like if there's so many times where it's like, oh, like Shein and all these other fast fashion brands for like, I guess this only kind of relates to clothes. But, like people are like refusing to buy from them, even though they're so cheap and people bought them for so long. They kind of realize the impact of those, and so now it's all about like, oh, let's go thrifting, go get vintage clothes. It's better quality, it lasts better. So it's like we've just been burned so many times on like shitty quality items, where it's like, yeah, let's just be more like environmentally cautious and buy like vintage stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up like buying online, you know, versus buying in person. Like I feel like probably like for me 10 years ago, I bought like a lot. Like I bought more of various things online, like clothes and, you know, computer parts and stuff for my car and, you know, whatever I needed. And now it's like I don't buy any of that stuff because most of the time it's junk. To your point, Emily, like most of the time that shit is junk. Like the clothes are like, you know, like literally sweatshop stuff, you know, and it's like they just fall apart or they shrink or it wrinkles instantly or the colors are like whatever. And now it's like the stuff that I buy on Amazon, it's like I would go to this, like I know that it's like it's in a store somewhere nearby, you know, like and I'm just like too lazy to go get it, or it's like, hey, I need some more deodorant, you know, or something like that. Like it is not like like all the clothes, like anything where it's like I have a level of uncertainty on it. I do not buy that online because I do not want to return it. I don't want to go through that. I will go to a store and try it on, and like you said, I mean, make sure that like it is a high quality thing, because I'm not going to wear it twice and throw it away.
I'm curious. I hope I'm not getting too far off track here, but do you guys buy your groceries online and have them delivered?
I do it when DoorDash is like, when I do the math on it, DoorDash gives me some insane coupon. Because sometimes it's like, oh yeah, order $30 more of groceries, we'll give you like $15 off or something. And then you can kind of like do the math on it. It's kind of worth it.
Like, I don't really know. I know Quinn, my wife, like listens to these, so I'm gonna pick on her a little bit. Like I know like she has like a system or something. Like I know when COVID was happening, we were like ordering online. I think like everybody was, you know, like ordering online. But now I think like she does kind of like this hybrid thing, like where she'll order some stuff online, but I think like online shopping probably just takes like a bit more time, you know, to like search up everything, I guess, like on her phone, because most of the time, you know, we're juggling kids and everything, and it's like, I don't really have time to sit down at a desktop and like navigate through everything. So I think most of the time she kind of gets like a game plan, you know, from online, and then goes to the store.
I like a grocery list.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Well, lately I've been ordering mine from Walmart and having them deliver it. I know that's terrible, but it's just with everything going on right now, I just find that I probably pay 20 something for that to have them delivered. But, I figure by the time I get to the place and I walk around the store and I get all the stuff, I don't know, like maybe it's like 45 minutes in there. I don't know how long. But I'm just like, I feel like it's money well spent at this point, but it's probably, I don't know. But I also use, instead of making a grocery list, I just add things to my Walmart cart as I go. And I'm like, oh, like you said, I need deodorant. Okay, I'll just add it to my cart.
Yeah.
And then when I'm ready, it's just all there and I just check out. But I don't know. Probably eventually I'll switch back to going to the store and just trying to save money. But right now it just feels like I just don't have a lot of free time. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, I like Quinn like buys all of the I'd say like main grocery stuff, and then like I really buy like all of my anything bathroom related. Like I buy all of that like myself on Amazon. Like I don't go like the only time I go into like a Walmart or Target or something is either like I'm picking up something, for on behalf of her, or for dinner or something, and it's like I've never actually like really shopping for myself because I do all of that just on Amazon. I don't kind of like I'm like you. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that.
Yeah, that's. But I definitely do buy all the like the toiletries and stuff like that on Amazon for sure. But
yeah, same. I'm totally busy with family and stuff, not busy playing games. So I definitely never ever take the easy way out. Yeah, I've been to myself like, I'm gonna sit here and play Counter-Strike. I'll do the DoorDash coupon. It'll be fine.
I totally get like the time aspect there. Like it's funny, at the beginning of this episode, we were talking about how like, it'd take like weeks to get something, and now it's like, well, that's like a $20 to save an hour of my time. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's like we've I don't know how to say it other than like, for lack of a better term, like we've like gamified or like made every single like minute of our time like super, trying to like, I don't know, squeeze the most seconds out of every second, Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, that's true though, but and I thought about this. My grandparents would be so upset if they heard me say that I was paying to have somebody deliver groceries. Of course, that used to be a thing. Especially I feel like back in the 50s, especially they would have, they'd have the grocery, like the bag boy. He would bring you groceries if you were in a small town. That was the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have it delivered. But I think if they knew now that I was paying $20-some to have my groceries delivered, they would just be like, "Oh my gosh, you're so wasteful." But at the same time, life used to be, I know everybody says it used to be a lot simpler, and I think you had more free time then. I remember feeling that way, but it seems like now, I don't know, it just seems like we're always busy and things are going on, and maybe that's not true, but it just feels that way. But
yeah,
I don't know.
No, I'm with you. I don't know, maybe not, but I definitely feel that way as well. Like I was thinking of what was that company called, like Schwinn or something? They would like literally Schwann. Yeah, Schwann. Yeah, they would literally come to your house and like deliver the food into your fridge. Like they would literally stock your fridge and your freezer. You ever heard of that, Elvin?
Maybe my neighbors had it. I thought they were rich.
Oh yeah. I had a neighbor that had that too, and like I thought they were rich because it's like, holy shit, they literally have people come in and like deliver them food.
That was literally back in my hometown, that was a status symbol. If you saw the Schwinn's van like pull up to somebody, you're like, Schwann's. Oh, they have Schwann's. Like, oh, that puts you like an upper class territory or something.
Yeah, and it was always crazy because it's like, you were as a kid, I was told, I was like, oh, groceries are so expensive. I'm like, oh my god, they're expensive and you have people delivered to your house?
That food was really good though. Their ice cream, it was all really good stuff, I will say.
I've heard that.
I never actually had I never had them delivered to my place, but I knew enough people that they gave me, samples of what they had. And it was just like, wow. That's crazy.
Oh, I mean, I was going to ask you, I guess, and Chris will ask you too, like, when you were in school, was there, I can't even remember what they were called, but there was like this catalog that like they would pass out, and it was full of like
Scholastic,
yes, thank you. And it was like, okay, so we all had that, and like, did you guys ever like buy anything out of there? Because I would like I would like stargaze at that thing, like, oh my god, this is the most, like, I want this and this and this and this, and like literally everything. My mom would be like, you can circle one thing, and I'd like really like have to pick and choose, and then like you'd get it, and it was like, it reminds me of and maybe I'm dating myself, like the Simpsons episode, like where Bart like has the hose in his driveway, and he's got like this dinosaur, and he's imagining this dinosaur like growing like huge and eating Lisa, and then he sprays it, and it like doesn't do anything. It just like actually like floats down the driveway into like, you know, into the road.
The storm drain.
Yeah, into the storm drain. Like, it was always that experience. Every single one of those things sucked ass. Like, did you guys ever buy anything out of that?
Just the books. It was the same with you. It was, as you said, you know, I was allowed to circle one book in there, but they wouldn't let me buy anything that wasn't a book because both my parents were teachers and my grandparents, I had a teacher.
Yeah.
But yeah. So there was teachers in the family. So yeah, it was all about the books. You couldn't buy the other stuff. No.
Yeah, for me it was same thing, but since my parents forced reading on me so much, I used to really hate reading, so I'd always like try to circle like the Guinness Book of Records books, and those books are like really expensive. So I never got anything. I mean, I would sometimes like save up quarters if I knew it was coming up, and like buy those like cool erasers they had for like 25 cents.
You explain why you hated reading.
It was just like forced on me. Like I think it was pretty late to read a little bit, because I just didn't want to read books. Then when I started doing it was more just like a punishment. It was like, oh, you got in trouble, go read. It's like,
It's the same for me, and I think I had ADHD, and I didn't know, nobody knew what that was, but I couldn't be bothered to sit down and focus to read. It just wasn't something. I couldn't sit still. I had things to do. I had Legos to build, and I wanted to do this and that and the other thing. And if you had to sit me down and force me to read pages, it was just not something that I had to be in the right mood. And again, my dad was an English teacher, blah, blah, blah. And so it was, again, they were like, Chris, you need to read more. Chris doesn't read enough. And it was just like a huge scandal in my family that I didn't read. So it was like really pressured on me, like you said, Elmi.
Yeah, and it's like, now I'm like, I try to read some books more and more now. I love it. So
same.
I've just got to get this out of my head. Like one of those Scholastic, I think it was in 6th grade. One of those Scholastic magazines literally had a machine in there. It was $110, and they marketed it as a flying machine. And they had they had like a kid on there. It looked like a bike, kind of that. And you know, the first thing that comes to mind is like, you know how in Mario Kart 8, like the wheels turn sideways? Like it looked literally like that.
Oh, wow.
And like, it was $110, and it was like, this is an actual flying machine. You will levitate, you know? And it's like, there is no way in the universe that thing worked. Like, there is zero chance that thing worked. And like, that is like the quality of shit they were selling in that thing.
I'm probably getting way off track again here, but that reminds me of something. Is when you guys probably never heard of like green stamps. So back when I was a kid, so this is like the 70s, right? I think that they probably stopped in the early mid 80s. But it used to be at grocery stores. I know Hy-Vee had their own kind. They were called Regal stamps. And so when you would go and you'd like say, it was sort of like reward points is really what it was. Before nobody talked about reward points. You got stamps. And so if you spent $50, they had this little machine and they would go 50 or whatever, and they'd turn the dial and it would spit out the right number of stamps. And you just kept collecting and they were basically like the same as postage stamps. You know, you looked on the back and with adhesive put it into a book, and you would fill up these books full of stamps. And when you had enough, then you could go to their catalog and buy their crappy merchandise. It was kind of like you're saying with the Scholastic. And it's like, but of course I didn't have any money. I wasn't buying groceries, but my grandparents, just as kind of like a treat, you know, they would be like, okay, Chris, you can have the stamps. So every time they would go, they would give me the stamps from when they're buying groceries. And my brother and I would just like fill up these books full, and we were just like dreaming in these catalogs of all these things we were going to buy with our stamps. And then when we did, it was pretty much the Bart Simpson experience. It's like, yeah, you get the dinosaur that floats down But anyway,
I was going to ask you about, because I feel like coupons have like kind of died nowadays, or they're just kind of either priced in or baked in, or I know there's some stores that like still do like extreme couponing, but like, at least my impression was that was much more of a thing back in the day.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that was something I did for fun, like on Saturdays or something with my mom, is we would just go through and we would cut out coupons and I would sit there and organize them. you know, and she actually had like a little pocketbook thing with like, they were categorized by like, here's the dairy, here's this, here's that. And so I would help her organize all the coupons. And so we'd go, I'd be like, hey mom, here's the thing for eggs. You know, we got one for this brand of eggs or whatever. And we would, so I would help mom with the couponing, but it was it was a big deal. And they would even have like double or triple coupon days, and you could go in and your coupons were worth twice or three times. And it was a big deal.
Yeah, I remember my mom being like into that for a little bit too. Funnily enough, it was when we were actually like before my parents divorced, and we were like actually like pretty rich. And then I don't remember like the couponing after that. I feel like it was totally like I don't know, middle-aged, like middle-class white woman thing. I don't know. That's always my impression anyway. Just the extreme couponing of the 80s and 90s.
What about like subscription services? Like, do you guys remember like OG Netflix? You can get like a CD in it.
Yeah, I had OG Netflix. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like you don't even have to go to the movie store. You know, you don't have to go to Family Video or Blockbuster and like get something. It was amazing. Like the first time it actually came, I remember. I think it was like Jim and I, my brother, like, were like, oh man, like this is gonna kill Blockbuster. You know, it's like it's kind of like I feel like everyone knew that. Like it was like this is it. Like that's it. And then you'd have like a queue, you know, of upcoming stuff, and it was it was a total game changer. And it's funny how like even Netflix like really quickly pivoted from even that, because then it was like just like boom, you stream it online, and it's like holy shit, that is wild. Like just even within a few years, it was like you're getting CDs, and then which was wild and radical, and then just a few years later, it's like everyone's streaming it on their computers and TVs.
Yeah, for sure, game changer. I remember that.
Yeah. Was there subscription services like what would you subscribe to before Netflix?
Not really anything like that. I think we talked about the Columbia Record Club, but that was really that was more of just forcing you to buy things. It wasn't really a subscription club.
Didn't have a Jelly of the Month club or something.
No, didn't have anything like that. Nope. That would all have been considered kind of a splurge back then, you know. So no, it wasn't. No,
I see.
Didn't do anything like that back then.
Now it's just to live, you have to have 4 subscriptions at least. Everything is a freaking subscription nowadays.
I know.
I was trying to think like really quick, like how many subscriptions I have, and it's maybe 15, like really, like it's wild.
Yeah, I have at least 5, maybe 6. Yeah.
It's like my phone, the internet, like probably we've got Netflix and Disney, and then we have Amazon Prime, and a bunch of them.
Do you have Max? Like I have Max and Peacock, and I guess I did away with Paramount, but it's like the streaming services kind of go in and out. Like sometimes I'll just like stop one and for a while, and then
I've got some subscriptions for D&D stuff. I have a subscription for this podcast, like Riverside, like this thing. I've got 3 different subscriptions for some various D&D stuff. It's just like, God, our whole life is just getting like nickeled and dimed, kind of. I mean, they're good products, but it's wild how I think of like even video games. When I first started playing, it was like you like bought the box and then like you owned the game, and like that was it. And then a lot of times like they would ship like free updates, all the time to you. And now it's like the only time you get like that type of thing is it's like a free to play game, and then they're selling you stuff in the shop constantly.
I remember thinking once I did get Netflix streaming, I pretty much cut out cable or satellite, whatever I had. And I can't remember how much that was. I don't know if you remember, but I was thinking it was like $70-$80 maybe for.
Yeah, it was really expensive. I remember getting, like, speaking of status symbols, I remember getting cable and being like, oh, this is like,
I made it.
You know, like I am a grown ass adult now.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then it was like, wait, it's $80 a month? Like, nah.
But what's funny about that is so it was like $80 a month. And then when I got Netflix and dumped the cable or satellite, I was like, oh, see, now I only have to spend 20 or 30 a month or whatever it was at the time. Maybe it was 15 when it first started. I can't remember now.
It was really cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Until they get you.
But yeah, and then they bumped it a few times. But then also it's like, oh, Netflix. Oh, now I need Hulu. Now I need this. Now I need Paramount Plus. And pretty soon you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm spending way more than it was just for
right. I know. Isn't that funny? Like, and sad.
But you don't think about it or notice it as much because it's $20 here, $15 there. Oh, what's $15 a month? Ah. But by the time you do that 6 times, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. My 15-year-old son, he, in lieu of getting an allowance, he actually wants subscriptions. And I think one is to Crunchyroll and the other one's, I can't remember. something like that. Oh, I think he has a Patreon. I think it's like it's a
anime Netflix.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Yeah.
So yeah, so his chores that he does every week, that's his payment is the subscription services.
Yeah, I hope your son doesn't look at like the Pirate Bay and just you can save his allowance and spend buying other stuff and then just still watch anime.
That was, I mean, speaking of that, like that was kind of the way, you know, to kind of get around a lot of that stuff. That was the kind of the Wild West. It's just like, pirate it, you know, pirate games or.
Just for the record, I've never pirated anything. Mediacom. I love Mediacom.
Yeah.
What's the most like impulsive purchase you guys ever had? For me, it was. I actually got it today. I can send a photo of it. I got a jersey from China. From this Celtic soccer player because I saw a really cool TikTok edit and it was $5. And it's just a pretty nice jersey, so that's the most impulsive thing I've bought.
I'm trying to think of when you're thinking of impulse, are you like, this is the most like vanity like thing I've bought like that costed the most? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like you're like, oh shit, I didn't really need this. Yeah.
I know for me, I just happened to be at Guitar Center in West Des Moines, and I'm just looking around, and one of the instruments I don't play is drums, but I was just back there looking at drums and going to look at these electric drum sets, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. And then, you know, about 15 minutes later, I'm walking out of the store with a $1,500 drum set, and I don't play. That was the worst time. But I will say that I had a lot of fun with it. I still can't play drums worth a darn, but me and the kids, we had a blast with it. So, but yeah, that was the worst. That was pretty dumb. So
mine is like, it's computer based. So I pasted it in the chat, but just to describe it, like it's called a Thermaltake Level 10. And it was a computer case. And this came out like in 2010. And it was $800.
Wow.
And it was a really pretty case. It was absolutely beautiful. But problem is like I made about $800 every 2 weeks at my job. And my rent was about $800 too. So basically, like I bought this case on eBay. It was used. Like I found it. It was like $700 because these things like basically didn't appreciate it all. And like I remember being like, all right, I bought this thing. Now how am I gonna eat? You know? Like, okay, I gotta go an entire month. Like, how am I gonna eat? And like I remember I was like being like, hey Dad, like can I come over for a little bit? You know, because usually like he would like give me some money sometimes. And it was a totally I mean, we were talking about very vain impulse purchases. That was the stupidest thing I have absolutely ever done with $800, given the circumstances I was in. So,
yeah, for me it was that thing that now I'm showing again, kind of my like CS:GO inventory. I'm like, oh, that's a cool skin. Oh, it's just $30, and then there's a lot of guns in the game, so it adds up quick.
like how much money do you think you spent online, Elmi, I guess? And let me qualify that, like, you know, in skins like that, like things that do not matter at all.
Oh yeah, then it's probably like $3,000.
Wow, that's crazy.
Like my lifetime from like when I was a kid and getting gift cards, all that.
That is crazy.
But the reason it's so high is because in high school I used to shovel lawns, and the money I would always do for shoveling driveways, not lawns, shoveling driveways.
Everyone hated you.
Yeah,
it was kind of a niche.
It was lucrative. Let's say that. Yeah. No, I bought so many League skins, so many CS:GO cases, and then as we talked about, like on episode 1, I would take these skins and I'd gamble them, and then I would get more skins. Then you would win, you would sell that skin, buy more skins, and it adds up quick. Do you guys like buy skins at all nowadays, or are you guys still like, no, that's a waste of money, it's a free game?
I have never gotten it. Like, if I get one, like, I'll do it. Or like if I really get into like the game and get like, usually I'll find a character that I like playing, and then I'll maybe buy one, and it's like that's the one I always use. But I've always been like pretty, just like I don't care, you know, like it just never has gotten into me. And then it's always like the cost thing too. It's like I'm paying, you know, $20 to, I don't know, change how the character looks. Like, what?
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. But then you have my son Dexter, who's when he does get like Christmas or birthday money, he's like, buy me Robux, Dad, so he can get new skins and new whatever. like
for me, what I think like what kind of shaped that is, you know, I played like a lot of RPGs growing up, and especially like you know, my first MMO was EverQuest, and it was like when you would equip a piece of armor, it would change like how you look, you know, and that piece of armor, some of the ways you would appear to people, like you could tell by looking at someone kind of what armor they had, or, you know, kind of like even what achievements they have. So you'd see someone like a breastplate on that was like, you know, a certain color, it looked a certain way, and it was like, wow, that person killed, you know, this raid boss or whatever. Like, that is super cool. Like, wow, what an achievement. And like, now, you know, you just pay $20 and you look cool, and it's like, well, anybody can pay $20, you know, like anyone can do that. You didn't kill a raid boss, you know, and like,
I'm not special.
Right. Yeah. It was just like, you just pay. It's sort of like a pay to look cool. And it's like that to me, like that, the whole, like, looking cool is also like sort of that aspect of like, you did something along with that, you know, like that cool way you look is attached to like a cool achievement that you have done.
Yeah.
What do you think about just like overall prices? Or like, I know some people I've heard at like tailgates and stuff, like, kids, if people are just lazy, you can still buy a house. People just don't like get another job. Like, you know, things are still affordable, you know. Or like, buy a house appreciated in value. Like, now it's worth like $1 million when they bought it in like the 50s, and it's like worth like way less.
Dude, I just sent an Instagram to like Mark and Morgan and Straub of this exact thing. There's a house that sold in 1999, $150,000. Sold in 2025 for $1.5 million.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, that is the type of shit that is happening everywhere. I look at even my wife and I's first house in southern Des Moines. We bought it for $130,000. 2 years later, not even 2 years later, we sold it for $160,000.
Holy!
It just sold again for $230,000.
Wow.
Like,
wow!
Unbelievable! It's just unbelievable.
But I'm Zilly, my first townhome home. Oh yeah, it's like $300K. We sold it for like $150.
Yeah, it's just like, how can anyone afford that? And you look at like
people
minimum
got
wage
shot
and
in this
stuff.
neighborhood.
I just don't understand. Like, those types of people, I feel like are extremely privileged in order to say something like that, and just wrong and ignorant, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, I don't even know if how the future looks for our generation, like buying houses. It feels like a lot of them, there's a thing going around where it's like, oh, why do I feel so poor compared to my friends? Or we have like the similar career paths and stuff. It's like, oh, they're being like subsidized by their parents and stuff, and that's like becoming a conversation now on like TikTok I've seen.
Yeah. They I've seen some stuff around like needing like a lot more millennials and Gen Zs like needing to live with their parents even until like 30s, in order just to do that. And it's just like that is crazy, because like I've heard plenty of stories from my parents, or stories that they've told me of their friends or whatever. It's like, yeah, they got kicked out at 18. They were on their own. It's like the second they turned 18, it was like, get the hell out of here. And they had to
abuse.
Right? Yeah, and it's like now it's like those people. It's like you would just starve. I don't know. Like you can't even afford rent. Like God.
Well, if they just got a second job and like picked themselves up at the bootstraps.
Stop being so lazy.
Yeah, right.
Now you guys understand.